It's minicamp time, mandatory minicamp. Deebo showed up. Nick Bosa showed up. Big Trent Williams in the house. All the reports from this week's minicamp before they pack up and wait for training camp. And there's a lot more action than the OTAs, that's for sure. We'll get into all of it right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you here once again. Brian Peacock, NFL analyst, co-host of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Eric Crocker, you know him, you love him. Former NFL, AFL cornerback, Arena Bowl champion, and also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. At BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker is where you can find us on Twitter. Thanks for making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. It is what we do. And today's episode is brought to you in part by Blue Nile. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On 49ers listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use promo code Locked On at checkout. Croc, we're kind of mini camping here, and the game showed up. I was a little bit hesitant to believe that Deebo Samuel would make it. And in fact, he has shown up to training camp. He showed up and took a physical Monday, then was doing a little jogging on Tuesday, then joking and talking a little trash with teammates on Wednesday. He's he's not on the field working out, but he's a member of the San Francisco 49ers again. And it's almost underreported nationally what's going on with Deebo, with everything we saw in April, demanding a trade. He's back and he's with the team. So this is great news. I like the vibes going on with Deebo Samuel at minicamp.
Great news. I saw something that said he was in the building on, I believe it was Monday, before we recorded. And then we recorded on talking about him probably not showing up, right? And I just didn't believe the picture. It was a picture and they were saying, oh, Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa, they're in the building. And I was like, okay, yeah. Like, what building is that? Is that the wherever the Warriors are playing? Like,
well, yeah, because I think Fred Warner, Trent Williams, and Deebo and Kyle Shanahan were all at that game, the basketball game, and that was Sunday. So then Monday, staying in the Bay, going and getting that physical, and then he was on the field Tuesday doing a little jogging. And here's the report from Matt Barrows, and I love the picture it paints. And Matt was at practice Wednesday, and he said, Deebo Samuel hasn't yet practiced with the 49ers, but he doesn't seem estranged. He joked around with teammates, chirped a little bit good-naturedly at defensive players after big plays, followed along with a play sheet in his hands. That is, he had fun. It was as if everything was normal. So I love seeing that. He wasn't just like there so he wouldn't get fined. He was there and involved, even if he wasn't necessarily practicing. So it's a great sign.
Also, he's a good guy. Like, his teammates love him. He loves his coach. Like, the whole situation it's a business decision. It's not a player that hates everything about the organization, right? It was about money, and it was about what sounds like a lowball offer or something, whatever they came at him with. He's like, dude, y'all don't even offer me. Like, y'all gonna be that disrespectful to me after everything we've been through? But he doesn't hate Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't hate John Lynch. And, he damn sure doesn't hate his teammates. So to see him out there, like you said, kind of participating and going along with everything, I get it. He looks like a dude that loves football. Playing catch with Kyle Shanahan's son, Carter. I saw that. Carter, named after Lil Wayne, the Carter albums.
Yeah.
But, he comes off as a dude that loves football, and his teammates love him. So I think everyone understands the business aspect of things. I remember going through a similar situation, not me personally, right? But Darrelle Revis, when I first showed up to OTAs, Darrelle Revis was not there. He was holding out. And next thing you know, he shows up and his teammates love him and they're excited to see him there. And he's working out. And then a week later or 2 weeks later, he's traded. But for the time that he was there, even though there might have been some issues with the contract stuff going on behind the scenes, you would never know by how he was acting with his teammates and everything like that. So I think guys that just love football and, they'll be able to put that business to the side for now.
Absolutely. And by the way, Croc, we got to talk a little bit on this podcast what it's like for a player to be going through OTAs and mini camps and what that experience is like, from and the way you experienced it. I think that would be fun. Maybe we'll do that on tomorrow's episode, but there's too many notes.
Real quick. There is, but I will say this one quick note. Everyone glosses over OTAs, right? Like they talk about it as if there's no significance to it. But I'll tell you this, I saw people getting cut left and right during OTAs. And a guy like me, Eric Crocker, like I was on the eggshells, like I was like nervous the whole time. Like, damn, am I gonna make it through OTAs? Like, it's serious for a lot of people now in the sense of taking a ton away from it. Like, no. But storylines can be created from OTAs, and players are definitely getting cut and other guys getting signed, and they're working guys out, and they have people trying to take your job. Like, it's the tension for certain guys, it's not nothing.
Definitely more important for some guys than others to try to go win that job and make their NFL dream come true. And there's a story about J.C. Tretter. And I know a lot of 49ers fans were talking about, and I've mentioned J.C. Tretter as the guy who's out there as a free agent that the 49ers could sign if they're looking for a starting caliber center. And he's gone through a lot of seasons with injuries, and he's been playing in games, and he actually played in every game, but wasn't practicing a lot of weeks. And he's trying to abolish OTAs essentially. He doesn't want all that practice time, but for some players they might need it, for some players not. I can see why Trent Williams wouldn't be at OTAs, and you want to put him on the shelf as much as possible, right? But some other guys like Eric Crocker, he needs every single rep, and you need to show up and you need to be there in front of those coaches to go win that job. So OTAs is definitely not nothing. And I can see it from your perspective how people don't make a big enough deal in some cases about OTAs. And you definitely don't want to abolish OTAs because guys like Eric Crocker, guys like, I don't know, Kendrick Bourne, an undrafted free agent, would he have been able to go win a job and win a roster spot and ended up getting that next contract with another team if he didn't have OTAs to go show that he was worth something?
Listen, I know we'll get into our notes and the specifics, but Ray Ray McCloud beat Ambry Thomas today for a long touchdown. Trust me, for Ambry Thomas, that's not nothing.
Right.
And for those coaches that are on looking, like, that's not nothing. Now, are they going to say, oh, we're just going to do away with Ambry Thomas because of this play? No. But I'm telling you, like, it means something just in the sense of, like, it's a negative for you. Ambry Thomas, the guy that they drafted 3rd round last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're evaluating everything. They're evaluating how you work. You think about draft prospects and what they're evaluating and watching them, as they, Alex Smith opened the door for his mom, right? Or pulled the chair out for his mom or something like that. And that might've made the difference in him getting drafted instead of Aaron Rodgers getting drafted by the 49ers 1 overall. So you can bet that things on the field are going to matter in OTAs if they're paying that much attention to everything you're doing, everything, how you're working, how you're interacting with people. So it absolutely all matters. I want to bring up the Trent Williams story real quick before we talk about some of the bombs that were being thrown at practice and Ray Ray McCloud on the receiving end. Did you hear the comments from Trent Williams talking about and we'll get into some comments later about Trent Williams talking about his teammates, but he was talking about his own self. And he said that Colton McKivitz would probably have given the 49ers a better chance to win in the NFC Championship game if he was playing than if Trent Williams was playing, because that's how hurt Trent Williams was with a high ankle sprain and probably should not have been out there. He said, hindsight is 2020, but looking back on it, I probably shouldn't have pushed it that far. Colton probably would have done a better job on 2 ankles than I did on 1. That's pretty amazing. And we saw the same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe hurting his own future, maybe playing when he shouldn't have. Did it help the 49ers? You could argue whether or not he should have been out there. But, I mean, that's really interesting that Trent was that hurt. And I didn't realize it until his comments at minicamp.
Yeah, like, you talked about Trent Williams, you talked about Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't play, and again, we'll never know, but do the 49ers go as far as they did? But would they be in the situation that they're in now? Could he have just said, you know what, thumb's hurt. They're like, all right, we're just going to move on with Trey Lance, where we are right now in this season, and go ahead and get your surgery, Jimmy Garoppolo, so you'll be good coming the offseason.
Right.
And he'd be much further ahead of schedule because he had this surgery in March,
I believe.
And he's scheduled to be able to throw in July.
Maybe June. I think from what I heard, he's scheduled to start being able to throw here in a couple of weeks in June, and it's supposed to be cleared for full participation in July.
Yeah, so we're saying about a few months different, right? So if he would have had his surgery in December, come March, or even April, come OTAs, he'd be throwing the football.
Yeah, he would have been. And also the shoulder is what ended up doing him in. And the way he fell, he was favoring his hand. So he wouldn't even have landed on his shoulder funny if he was held out because of his finger. So maybe the second injury doesn't happen if the first one's not there because he falls differently. So, I mean, there's a lot of aspects of that. And of course, does Trey Lance win a game for the 49ers in the playoffs if Jimmy is sitting? And so, you know, obviously you'll never know with all that stuff, but you know, there's an argument to be made that some guys are, and it's really hard because if a guy says he can go, the coach is going to put him out there. And we've seen Kyle Shanahan give somebody who's, you know, banged up all week, 27 carries once they get into the game because he's the best running back. He's going to ride him if you're there. And so, you know, you've got to have the medical and the players in on it together. And at some point you have to tell a player who's maybe too willing to play hurt that they can't play.
Right. I had a buddy kind of question things about Trey Lance, and he's like, yeah, that tells me all I need to know about Trey Lance because they elected to play Jimmy Garoppolo, who was banged up. And I'm like, dude, if Jimmy Garoppolo was able to throw a football, like that's their starting quarterback. I get it. We look at Trey Lance because of where he was drafted, but at the end of the day, Jimmy Garoppolo was their starting quarterback. So if they can go into a game and their starting quarterback can play, which we saw him and he played, like you could tell a difference. I couldn't tell a difference. Looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Whether it was a good pass or bad pass, like his good passes that he made, which he made plenty of them still. It looked like Jimmy G. The bad passes, it looked like Jimmy G, whether it was the finger or thumb or whatever affecting it or not. So at the end of the day, I think you still knew more so of what you were getting from Jimmy Garoppolo, even with some of the injuries he was dealing with. And, you know, I think that's the tough thing when, you know, you start to kind of tie it all together and are you pushing it a little bit too much? Man, it's like, if you can play, man, this is gotta put your nuts on the table during that time right there. And you know, and that's what it was. And ultimately, again, the 49ers had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship game with all that going on.
Oh, no doubt. And you know, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a competitor, and he's already tough and going to play through injuries if he can. With everything else going on with a guy right behind him, he's not going to let that guy play if he thinks he can get out there. So it's just an added extra level of that. And, you know, maybe even Jimmy G hurt himself. He could have been starting for another team already and not be hurt and gone through OTAs with the Colts or whoever it would have been, Washington. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. Let's get on to some more of the mini camp notes from the last couple of days at 49ers practice. But I want to let the folks out there know about Blue Nile. Have you heard of BlueNile.com? Well, whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as style setting. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. And if you are like me and you're not sure what to even buy in a situation like that, whether it's for mom or you're trying to take your relationship to the next level and you're looking for that fine piece of jewelry and having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On 49ers listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings, so use promo code Locked On for that $50 off. Again, that is code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I want to thank everybody once again for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. There is a survey that the network has put together to let us know what you like and what you don't like about your favorite Locked On podcasts and make them even better, if that is at all possible with Locked On 49ers, Croc. I'm not sure it is, but you can let us know at lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. And it won't take very long, and everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So to take the audience survey, go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey, and we appreciate your help. Speaking of Trent Williams, he was speaking of a guy that we talked about recently about, how last year's second-round guard Aaron Banks has remade his body, and maybe he's ready to take that next step. And he was a non-factor last year. Can he jump in and replace Laken Tomlinson? with that starting left guard spot. This is what Trent Williams had to say about Aaron Banks. He said, shedding 20 pounds, he definitely looks light on his feet, and his footwork looks 10 times better. His balance, his upper body lean, everything looks like it's in place now. So that's pretty key, because he's talking about a lot of things that we mentioned, Croc, when we looked at the Notre Dame tape of Aaron Banks. We thought, wow, he's kind of like falling over a little bit. He's not really good with his balance, getting out on the move. So losing 20 pounds, better, just an entire better frame, better.
It should help.
And so, footwork, upper body lean, balance, like those are the things we talked about. So that's huge for Aaron Banks.
When I lose weight, I feel lighter on my feet. Like I feel like I can do a little bit more. Like when I'm heavy, when I'm overweight, I can feel it. I train athletes for a living, outside of podcasting. And, I have to demonstrate a lot of things. And when I'm heavier and I'm out there doing box jumps and things like that, and some, kind of lateral movements, it's like, man, I feel a little heavy right now. I need to drop some weight.
You move like this, and you're like, oh, is that back fat? What's going on over there? And like just everything's a little bit more sluggish. Your joints feel it more, little ankle flexion gets a little bit more difficult. So it's everything.
So I could see it. Now, again, and this goes back to OTAs and things like that. But I'd say this, and I'm going to say it about another guy as we get to some of these other reports, but it's much better to hear good things about a player as opposed to nothing or bad things, right? Because if you say nothing, then that probably means it's bad as well, right? So they're saying positive things about Aaron Banks. At the very least, he's trending in the right direction. Whether that carries over to training camp, whether that transfers over to week 1 against the Chicago Bears, at the very least, right now, we know he's in a better place today than he was this time last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. I got excited hearing about some bombs that were thrown at practice on Wednesday, and apparently they were working on the deep ball a little bit. And man, sounds like Trey Lance was not disappointing. He threw 2 perfect 40+ yard bombs on back-to-back plays for touchdowns. 1-2 free agent wide receiver Ray McCloud, who by many reports is having a pretty darn good mini camp and OTAs and standing out. And then also tied in Jordan Matthews. Both of those came on 7-on-7 drills. But first of all, I forgot Jordan Matthews was still on the roster. And I love Jordan Matthews from way back in the day. Maybe another year of, doing squats and getting a little bigger and stronger. Maybe he can be a part of that, that tight end group. But I know our guy, Larry Kruger, friend of the show, I've been on his podcast. He's been on my podcast. I've talked to him on the radio. He's a former scout. So he looks at things with that eye. He said that Ray McCloud's been a guy who's been electrifying during practices, and not only, little slot guy, he's been going up and playing big and making plays on the ball too. So maybe Ray McCloud has an opportunity to earn a bigger part of the 49ers offense than we all expected. But the big one is obviously Trey Lance making big throws.
Yeah, well, first, back to Ray McCloud. This is a guy that had like 40 receptions last year. So I know a lot of times you hear about free agent signings or even like a Trent Sherfield. And not to take anything away from Trent Sherfield, I think he had an amazing offseason last year. And you're like, man, like, is he going to get a legit opportunity here? Like, to get the ball, and then the season comes. He scores the first touchdown of the season, right? You're like, oh, man, like, okay. Like, and then they're like, we're not really going to give you any more opportunities.
Yeah, never mind.
And a lot of times there's a big part of roster politics. And when we dive into, like, my experience with OTAs, I'll touch more on that. But the more that they invest in someone, the more opportunities they're going to get, unless there are a bunch of injuries, and it kind of forces a guy onto the field, and then he makes the most of his opportunities from there. So when you look at Ray McCloud versus Trent Sherfield, well, Sherfield was a guy that came in probably like vet minimum amount of dollars, a 1-year contract, as opposed to Ray McCloud, who got 2 years, $10 million. So just off that alone, he's going to get more opportunities than what we saw from Trent Sherfield, who Trent Sherfield had a terrific offseason. So Ray is intriguing. Again, have 40 receptions, is no more as a return guy. And I think that's why they made him more of a premium free agent signing. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, the air quotes with premium signing. But, he's a guy, I do believe that they have to figure out a way to get on the field, because he's going to be active on game day. He's likely going to be a return man. And you don't want him to just be a return man. You want him to be able to contribute in the passing game as well. And this is the time where you figure out if you can do those things.
Absolutely. Ray Ray McCloud, stock up. You don't want to take too much stock into what's going on, though, in these type of practices in minicamp, but, it's better to be standing out than to not be doing anything at all. We'll get to a little bit more of that. Some other of the wide receivers. I want to finish up this part about Trey Lance, though, and 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans talking at the podium Wednesday about Trey Lance and those bombs he was throwing. He said, quote, Trey Lance is putting the ball on the money every time he throws. The accuracy is there. The deep ball is there. I'm excited for Trey and what he can do. He's setting himself up to have a real nice season. And he said on every time he throws, he's putting the ball on the money. So that's because, like, what?
No, there was a report yesterday. He threw a fluttery ball that was way off, like a deep pass. So I wouldn't say every time, but I get what he's saying. Like, just more times than not. And if you look at, gosh, I hate even saying this, but there's OTA stats with the media there, and I saw Grant Cohn report this, but he's completed 75% of his passes. So I think when he says he's been accurate and on point, I believe he's basically saying, hey, 3 out of every 4 passes, he's completing on this defense. And I think that is encouraging, to say the least, for a guy who you're trying to figure out, where is he heading into year 2? He didn't have the experience of year 1s and the ups and downs. And, how is his processing? Steve Young said it was great, right? Just putting the ball where it needs to be. And you see him hit 2 of these deep balls down the field. That's cool. And as well as the underneath stuff that he's been accurate with as well. I think that's very encouraging with where he is in his development to this point.
And he did talk about at the podium how he'd worked on his mechanics and how in the offseason you're working on throwing, not necessarily the offense. You come back, now you're working on the offense. And maybe some of the things throwing, you need to change a little bit here and there, timing-wise, footwork-wise, to make everything work and come together. But obviously a work in progress for Trey Lance, and he's putting in that work. And we're seeing some fruits here, at least in minicamp. And according to Ken Minman, he was 10 of 14 passing and to 11 different wide receivers. But the names of the wide receivers that weren't there is interesting. And so what can we take from the players who aren't making waves as much in practice? And I want to talk Nick Bosa, how he looks at minicamp and what his future contract situation is coming up. But how about Built Bars? Looking at Nick Bosa, I think he might be packing away Built Bars when he's at home in Florida working out all off season long, because he keeps coming back and looking like he is in ridiculous shape. Kyle Shanahan talking about his thighs and talking about his tan. But man, if you want something that is packed with protein that still feels like you're getting a treat, but is low in sugar and low in calories, you're trying to fix your diet, and maybe you want to have a little treat, but not have it wreck that diet or wreck your body. Maybe body fat's something you are working on. We're talking about Aaron Banks. Maybe he's in on the Built Bars as well. How about caramel brownie? Don't you love chewy chocolatey brownies? You can find it at built.com, but low in calorie and high in protein. Protein too. Caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top, right? That sounds great. But 17 grams of protein. 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar in the new caramel brownie flavor of Built Bar. Caramel brownie bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, as are most Built Bars, which really makes you feel like you are getting a treat. And it's delicious, real chocolate, not some brown colored funky business that they call chocolate. It's not chocolate flavoring. It's 100% real chocolate. And it envelops every Built Bar, which really makes you feel like you're getting a treat and makes it even more amazing that they're able to give you something like a caramel brownie bar with 17 grams of protein and only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. So you can get your own caramel brownie Built Bars, puff bars, mixed box, whatever flavor you want at built.com, and get 15% off with our promo code. Go to built.com right now. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, Croc. I don't want to say it's negatives necessarily, but not participating in practice. Obviously, we talked about the Deebo stuff. Brandon Ayuk got a day off from minicamp, it looks like. Juwan Jennings not catching passes, but there's been some pretty rave reviews about what kind of a pass catcher Juwan Jennings has been.
Well, Jennings was off today too.
Right, so Jennings was not practicing. And the other guy who's not practicing is third-round draft pick Danny Gray. And he tweaked his hamstring. And I've seen this story a lot unfold throughout the years following the draft as close as I do, following the 49ers. And man, goes back to your point earlier about OTAs. This can really derail a young player's career, a rookie's career that's trying to get those reps, trying to prove that he belongs as part of the rotation. You really don't want something like this to linger into training camp, because I've seen it a lot where rookies come in and they have those soft tissue injuries because they're kind of working out for the draft. And once you get into the OTAs and actually training for actual football, sometimes their bodies are in a weird place. And you see a lot of really fast receivers like this too have those types of injuries, and pulled hamstrings and quads and groins and things like that can just nag you, and it can really derail a rookie season. So that worries me. And I hope Gray, I hope they're being very cautious with him and he's able to come back and be 100% for training camp, because that would be unfortunate if he's not able to get those reps in camp, because that'll really hurt his production as a young player.
Yeah, I think that's the toughest thing, especially for a young receiver in Kyle Shanahan's offense. I always go back to Deebo Samuel's rookie year, where he said, man, I didn't think I'd ever get the offense. And it didn't even start clicking until like around the start of the season, or the first quarter of the season, where he started to be able to really grasp it. And when you're a young guy and it's tough to grasp it because you can't get those like on-field reps. And it's one thing to get mental reps. He's on the sideline. I hear he had the chart and he's following along with everything that's going on. And that's fine. But there's a whole nother element to actually going through it and doing it and getting those reps, and you being in that position, and the confidence that you get from knowing like, oh, I did it right. Or, hey, I did it wrong, but okay, now I know what wrong is and I can correct it. And that's huge. So he's missing out on some valuable reps. Again, OTAs, I know a lot of people don't want to make a big deal out of OTAs, but for a lot of guys, they really need this. Trent Williams, he doesn't need to be there. Deebo Samuel, he doesn't need to be there. But when you're a rookie and you're trying to figure out, especially in the offense that sounds like, and again, I don't know what this offense is, but from everything I hear, it's very complex. Remember, my guy, Greg Pinelli, has his a quarterback that he works with and trains, Tyler Bray, who was with the 49ers practice squad towards the end of the season. And Tyler Bray said, dude, it's the most difficult offense I've ever been a part of. And he's been with Andy Reid, he's been with Nagy, he's been under that tree, and he's like, this is far more complicated. So, that's tough, especially for a young guy coming in, probably from SMU, where their offense is probably super simple. They had Gray line up on the right side, and that's it. You just line up there, you're stationary. I don't even know if I saw him motion at all. It was just stationary receiver, and you just run a few routes. This is much more complex than that, and you need those legit reps during OTAs.
How about a guy that was in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse last year in Brandon Ayuk? Am I asking too much to be expecting more reports, especially with no Deebo practicing? Oh, we lost Croc. There we go. You're right. You have earthquake there in Arkansas, or a tornado, probably more likely.
Damn cord.
You're tethered to the situation. You're not used to that. Croc's been having some mic issues. Sounds good today, but he's not on his old mic. Am I expecting too much from? I feel like Brandon Ayuk, first round wide receiver, and somebody asked us on Twitter today about it because you said that there was a couple of reports that weren't great. He's dropped a couple passes, and it hasn't been terrible or anything like that for Brandon Ayuk according to reports. I haven't seen it. I haven't put my eyes on minicamp. I haven't been there. You haven't been there either. But I feel like when you're a player, I expect Brandon Ayuk, that first round wide receiver that has the athletic ability. They traded up to get him. I expect with no Kittle and no Deebo there, especially with how much time Ayuk has spent with Trey Lance in the offseason, it should be like, wow, this guy's crazy good. He's obviously the best guy here in practicing right now. He should stand out so much that it just should be painfully obvious to everyone. And I'm not really getting that vibe for Brandon Ayuk. And I'm not that anything's necessarily terrible that we're hearing about him, but I just would like him to stand out more and be like, this is the dude. And if Deebo Samuel was gone, this guy would be getting, 1,400 yards from scrimmage.
Listen, when they drafted him, in my opinion, it was to be that guy, right? You don't just go, obviously, trade up and draft a receiver round one just after taking Deebo Samuel previously, right? Because you got to think of this from a financial standpoint. If you draft a receiver first round, you're banking on him being a legit wide receiver one. So at some point, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money. So how would that conflict with what you eventually have to pay Deebo Samuel? So to me, that was let me know, like, hey, at some point, like, we might have to choose between Deebo and Brandon Ayuk. And we think that maybe Ayuk has more legit wide receiver one potential. Now, were they expecting the season Deebo had last year? Maybe not, right? But I think when you draft him in that first round like that, that's along the lines of what you're thinking. Like, that's going to be the guy. Think of Jamar Chase, right? This is drastic. Example, but they just drafted T. Higgins. He was almost 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie. They drafted him at the very top of the second round. Well, they go and draft Jamar Chase. They want Jamar Chase to be the guy. And I know you draft a guy at 5, of course you want to be the guy, and then he is, right? And there's no doubt about it. Like, when it comes time that to pick and choose, like, who are we going to pay? It's 100% going to be Jamar Chase, without a doubt, right? And it looked like, from just outside looking in, 49ers were setting themselves up for that type of situation, because I don't think you want to pay 2 receivers $20 million. And I don't know, it's playing out a little different. So to your point, yeah, I was expecting him to start to look like a wide receiver one and really fill that, not void, because you have that guy with Deebo Samuel, but be his equal at the very least. Like, that's what you're drafted to be. And it doesn't sound like that's happening. It doesn't sound like he sucks. And we've seen him play. Like, he's a solid receiver. And maybe all he'll ever be is a solid wide receiver too. And that's fine. But I don't think that was the expectations. And to your point, kind of what you're talking about with, just when you hear about things like CeeDee Lamb, well, every time, their Cowboys practice, every time, I mean, it's just CeeDee Lamb, just play after play after play after play. And we haven't really gotten that from Ayuk. Not saying it's a bad thing, but just maybe not to the expectations. But hey, a wide receiver too, if that's what he is, like that's solid.
We're not saying that it can't be coming as well, because we didn't see what Deebo was last year necessarily coming either. I know. I will say this, Croc. You and I both pushed back because everyone was going crazy hype-wise for Ayuk last offseason. Say, don't forget about Deebo, because Deebo's pretty good, and he's shown some stuff as well on the field. We didn't necessarily predict what Deebo was going to be, but we were definitely talking about don't forget Deebo last offseason when everyone was on the Ayuk hype train.
I got called names on social media, on Twitter, because someone had asked, like, oh, you got Ayuk or Deebo? And I'm like, and it was somebody from the outside, like, not pertaining to like a 49er fan or anything like that. But they're like, hey, Croc, for fantasy purposes, you got Deebo, you got Ayuk, who do I draft? And I'm like, well, I'm taking Deebo Samuel. And I got
a lot Deebo of later. Deebo was a league winner in fantasy leagues because you could get him later too. Yeah. And I had Deebo on almost all my teams because he was cheap. And people were like, Ayuk was going a little bit higher.
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback on that. And I'm not like, pumping my chest on that or anything like that. I just thought he'd get a ton of touches because of how you're able to utilize him. And that was, I was correct on that.
Yeah, you were correct on that one. I was correct about Nick Bosa not having contract negotiations this offseason. That's a next offseason problem. And we're going to talk more about that on next episodes. That's a next episode problem as well, because we're out of time today. But more notes on Nick Bosa, how he's looking at camp, what his contract negotiation situation is right now with the 49ers, and any other notes from minicamp that pop up over the next 24 hours or so. And I want to get deeper with Croc about what it's like for a player, especially a bottom of the roster player, to fight through OTAs, minicamp, and training camp. All that coming up on tomorrow's episode of Locked On 49ers. And maybe there's even some time for your questions. So hit us up on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker, or in the comments on YouTube. Make sure you're all subscribed up to your favorite platform, wherever you can find Locked On 49ers. And Croc and I will be back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.